first episode of The Pod People. I am Eugene Lundeen, and I am joined by my good friends Matisse Van Rossum.
Hello.
And Ben Sheets over here.
Welcome to Spook City.
Are you feeling a little chilly? Do you need a blanket? Well, too bad. That blanket is a ghost.
Spook City is like Suplex City, but way scarier. Brock Lesnar is there, though.
And now you may be wondering what we're going to be doing here in Spooky City. We're going to be talking about horror movies.
The spookiest of times will be had.
So you better be prepared to scream and shout and to stimulate your mind with our lovely discussions.
And piss your pants.
Lots of peeing.
And if you don't piss your pants, be sure to comment and let us know so that we can do better next time, because we want to get those trousers soaked.
If you're not pissing your pants, we're not doing our job.
Exactly.
So let's just jump into the news, guys. So first thing I want to talk about, It.
Oh, that's right.
It's just become the highest grossing horror movie of all time for R-rated horror movies, that is.
I'm surprised that it hasn't beaten out Passion of the Christ yet for just highest grossing R-rated movie. So
yeah, well,
it's still got a ways to go until it can beat that. But shit, The Exorcist. That's a big leap right there. I didn't even know that was the highest grossing horror movie.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but you both have.
Yes, we did go see it a couple of weeks ago.
The big thing I want to ask is, does it deserve all that hype, you know? It's a big movie, but is it like Exorcist level enigma?
That's an interesting question, because I enjoyed this movie a lot. I'm a big Stephen King fan. I've read the book several times since high school. Seen the 1990 made-for-TV movie a few times. And I thought this movie was really well done. It definitely falls into a lot of like the tropes of modern horror, a bunch of jump scares accompanied by loud noises, but I think it really did the novel justice, especially compared to the Tim Curry movie. But in terms of The Exorcist, do I think it will surpass that legacy? That I don't know about, because The Exorcist was really groundbreaking for its time. It was something that people hadn't seen before. And, you know, people were walking out of the theater because it was too scary. They were getting freaked out, you know, and I don't think it has done anything really groundbreaking for the genre. I think the reason it's surpassed The Exorcist is just because the huge nostalgia factor. Everybody loves the book and loves the old movie and loves Tim Curry as Pennywise, and they've been hyping this movie up for the last few years. So I think the hype is really what got it to the point that it's at.
Well, I'm definitely one of those people that love Tim Curry in the original. Does Martin Skarsgård?
Bill Skarsgård.
Bill Skarsgård. Does he
one of the many Skarsgårds.
Yeah, one of the 27 Skarsgårds.
I think you could call it a dynasty at this point.
Yes, I think dynasty is the proper word.
The Skarsgårds dynasty.
They're even stronger than the Clintons.
The Skarsgårds guard. Anyways, does he do as good of a job as Tim Curry?
They do very different things.
Sure.
Tim Curry definitely plays up the goofiness a lot more than Bill Skarsgård does. I think Skarsgård actually did a great job. He's much creepier than Tim Curry. Like, Tim Curry is great. He's got the charisma required, but he's not a particularly scary villain, and he's also extremely ineffectual at doing what he does, because in that movie, pretty much every scene is him popping up and scaring the kids and then just allowing them to calmly walk out of the room and get away from him. So he's not great at, you know, eating children like he's supposed to. Whereas Bill Skarsgård, I think, pulls that off a lot better.
There's a lot of weird stuff in the original movie. Like, that whole, like, second part, you know, it's like a TV two-parter.
Well, right.
And the second part is all just, like, a dinner party they're having.
And that is extremely tonally inconsistent from the rest of the movie. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of love for that old movie, but man, it really goes downhill in that second half a lot.
Yeah.
What do you think, Eugene?
Well, I'm sorry I have to say this, but I completely agree. I feel the same way for the most part, actually. I think that there are a lot of parts in it that I love that I think are really great. I love all the kids and how they all just get along with each other. I thought that was all done very well. But none of the scares really worked for me. I didn't find any of them very effective, but I think that there certainly are a lot of people that do. And especially with The Exorcist, I think that they might find that movie ineffective. They might think that this isn't scary at all. Why did people find this so good? Why was this the highest grossing R-rated movie? And they might love it for the things that they did. So I think it just comes down to jump scares work for more people than they do for me.
Right, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I don't find jump scares particularly effective, and it's a shame that horror movies these days have sort of, come to rely on them more than anything else, because there's a big difference between being startled and being scared.
Oh, yeah. Well, you see with the divide between a lot of people with It Follows, a lot of people love that movie. I love that movie. I think it's great.
Too.
But a lot of people just were bored by it. They couldn't understand what was so scary about it. They just thought it was dumb because they didn't find the creature scary, I guess, because they never felt scared by just that presence. Where for me, I thought that was terrifying. Just that,
I agree. It's that existential dread of no matter what you do, this thing's going to be following you and it's going to catch up with you at some point. It's, like your own impending death. You can run from it, but you can't ever escape it. And I think that's way more horrifying than, something jumping out of a dark space. It might get my heart rate up and I'm going to jump, but it doesn't have any lasting effect. That's just being startled, not being scared.
We'll have to do a It Follows review sometime.
Yes, I think that would be a good retrospective.
We all love that movie, and we could all talk about it for hours.
Ad nauseum. We shouldn't get too off topic with that.
But Eugene, going off of what you were saying earlier, It is a big movie. Do you think we'll get more clown horror movies now?
I think that this will probably just cause an increase in more Stephen King adaptations.
Yes.
That's sort of my feeling on it.
I agree with you 100%. I think we probably are going to see some more killer clowns, but I don't think anything that's done with any sort of, real finesse. I think it's going to be very cheap. But
is now the time for the Killer Clowns from Outer Space remake?
Oh, hell yes. Yeah.
Oh, God.
They would be
I hadn't even
fools not
thought
to do
about
it.
that.
Oh, man.
Oh, God. I hope they don't do that.
How horrible would it be if they tried to do a gritty, realistic Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
I cannot even imagine.
I would love that.
Oof.
See, I didn't see It when I was younger or anything, but I did see Killer Clowns from Outer Space, so that was my It. I would love to see that get turned into a remake be gritty and done well.
Gritty and dark.
Yeah, there we go. Get the guy who did It Follows on that one. I think it would be fantastic.
That sounds just dreadful. But yes, I think Eugene brings up a good point. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of Stephen King adaptations. This is already the second one of the year with the release of The Dark Tower, which totally flopped.
Shit, that's
Yeah,
right.
and deservedly.
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't seen it, but I can't imagine that it's very good.
Yeah.
Although I did hear there's talks of an HBO Dark Tower series, which I think could be good if it's done by the right people, because I think The Dark Tower is much more conducive to long-form television, considering that it's 7 books long.
Right, it's long as hell, so.
This new movie that just came out is supposed to be a sequel to the 7 books, so I don't know who they made that movie for.
I've never read the Dark Tower series, but it's always seemed like prime cocaine era Stephen King.
It's actually really good. I'm about a third of the way through the 5th one.
Oh,
right
wow.
Now. Yeah, I've been reading them pretty voraciously, and it's good. Well, I mean, he started writing the first one when he was in college, and he finished the 7th one like 10 years ago or something like that. So it's been something that has spanned basically his entire writing career.
So you go through the cocaine.
You go through the cocaine-fueled Stephen King phase. It's not nearly as cokey as it is. As much as I love that book, there's definitely a lot of him throwing spaghetti at the wall. Most of it sticks, though.
Yeah, a lot of it does, but...
And certainly enough sticky spaghetti to make a good remake of the whole thing.
Didn't Stephen King also write The Running Man?
He did, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I always forget about that. That's very weird to me.
It was under the name Richard Bachman.
Right. It was one of his pen names because back in the day, it was apparently considered blasé to release more than one book per year.
Something like that, yeah.
So if he wrote more than one novel in a year, he would just release the additional ones under a pen name so people wouldn't think, oh, Stephen King is just cranking out trash. All right, well, I think that probably about wraps up our news segment, unless you guys have anything else.
Yes, it was good, but it was okay. And I think that's everything that we need to say about the movie.
I would recommend it. If you haven't seen it,
yeah.
I would say see it. It's definitely one of my favorite movies of the year so far.
I'm definitely planning on seeing it as soon as I can, so...
All right, so moving on. This week, our theme for the show is bad mothers and motherhood in horror. So we are going to start out by talking about Darren Aronofsky's new film, Mother.
Oh, boy.
And you have to say it that way because it has an exclamation mark on the end. And apparently that is supposed to convey the tone of the movie. So, Ben, why don't you tell us about Mother?
Oh, God. I gave myself the summary task for this one, but it's going to be a challenge. So, Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem are living in a remote house, and Javier Bardem plays this kind of reclusive poet. Jennifer Lawrence is his housewife, and Jennifer Lawrence is rebuilding this house.
Which is Javier Bardem's childhood home that was destroyed in a fire.
Yes.
So she's repairing it and doing the renovations all by herself while he tries to force himself to write, but he is consumed with writer's block.
Yep. And out of nowhere, Ed Harris shows up, and he's a doctor, and he thinks the house is a bed and breakfast, so he wants to stay there. Javier Bardem welcomes him in. Jennifer Lawrence is very against this, but she's kind of brushed aside. Ed Harris's wife shows up, and as the movie goes on and on, more and more people show up, and yeah, shit just gets wild. I don't really know how much I should go into anything beyond that.
We'll get into that.
Spoiler
at some point.
territory. Yeah,
we will definitely get into spoiler territory. But for now, I think that's a good basic summary.
But yeah, general thoughts. What did you guys? I know what you guys thought of this movie. You guys both didn't like it, and I'm gonna be the one. I'm gonna be the mother defense force here.
Well, good. We need someone like that because
somebody had to like it.
I'll agree with you guys. Mother was a dumb movie.
I found it very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
I will go ahead and say that I was never bored, but I just grew more and more frustrated throughout the movie. I think this is a good time to broach what this movie is really about. If you haven't read anything about it or interviews with Aronofsky or anything like this, you may not know. But Mother is an allegory. It is a retelling of stories from the Bible. Javier Bardem as the poet is God. Jennifer Lawrence is Mother Earth, hence why the movie is called Mother. Ed Harris is Adam. His wife, Michelle Pfeiffer, is Eve. The house they live in is representative of Earth. The symbols in this movie are extremely heavy-handed. What frustrates me so much about this movie is that there is no story outside of the allegory that it's trying to tell. It's not like taking characters that have their own personalities and feelings and trying to relate a tried and true story through them. Instead, it's just like, hey, let's very literally tell the story of the book of Genesis.
I would totally agree with that. And
Yeah,
the thing
well, it's impossible to disagree.
It worked for me not because of that, because that stuff didn't work for me. It worked for me because it was just a thrill ride. You know, it was one of the most entertaining theater experiences I've had in a while. Every time you thought this would be the peak of escalation, you'd be like, fuck you, let's do a left turn and ramp it up 5 notches. And that was every like 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, it would just ramp itself up to the point where, yes, it...
Except for that one weird slump in the middle of the movie where it de-escalated sharply.
Yes,
that
okay.
I thought was extremely ineffective.
We might as well just jump into talking about that.
We'll go ahead and say from this point out, everything could potentially lead us into spoiler territory.
Okay. Well,
I'd say let's leave it open-ended. So
I will say right now, if you want to go see Mother, go see it.
Go see it with your grandma.
It won't be an uncomfortable movie experience. I want to go off in a tangent for a second here, just to talk about how you shouldn't see it with any family members, only because I have made that mistake with Aronofsky earlier.
You should absolutely see it with your most conservative, closed-minded family
inadvertently saw Black Swan with my dad, and let's just say that very sensual scene with with Mila Kunis and Natalie Portman, very uncomfortable with your father sitting right next to you, groaning. I don't recommend it. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend at all.
So basically, to give a little more context to the story, so we can talk about this slump.
Yes, now we are in actual spoiler territory.
So yeah, as Ben said, Ed Harris shows up believing their house to be a bed and breakfast on the outside. Turns out he's actually a diehard fan of Javier Bardem's work, and use this as an excuse to be able to spend time with him. And Ed Harris shows up alone first, since he is supposed to be portraying Adam. And then we have a scene where he's puking in the bathroom, and we see Javier Bardem holding his side, and he's got like this big, like nasty looking gash hole in his side on his rib cage. And then guess what? Surprise, the next day, Eve shows up in the form of Michelle Pfeiffer. So that was not subtle. Michelle Pfeiffer does a great job, but there's not much to that character other than she likes getting drunk and telling Jennifer Lawrence that she needs to go ahead and have some babies and be sexier with Javier Bardem. And there's this really neat scene where they're doing laundry in the basement, and Michelle Pfeiffer makes fun of Jennifer Lawrence's granny panties and shows off some of her own lingerie and says, you should get some stuff like this. But anyway, that's besides the point. Then Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer's children show up. They're 2 sons who 3 guesses who they're supposed to represent, because they get in a fight about inheritance or something, and then one of them dramatically kills the other in Jennifer Lawrence's living room.
Right in front of Jennifer Lawrence.
Right in front of Jennifer Lawrence. And then the surviving brother, Kane, runs out into the woods and is not really seen again. Anyway, after this whole scene, they just decide to sort of have a memorial service at the house, and they show up with all of these guests, much to Jennifer Lawrence's dismay, because she just wants to, be kept to herself with her husband and just have a quiet, peaceful life. But all these people come in and start being extremely rude and breaking stuff in the house.
They all want to try to take something to keep as a keepsake for their own. Because Javier Bardem is a legendary poet. Blah, 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 blah. Everyone is busting into their house. Is that before or after Jennifer Lawrence gets knocked up?
That is before. It happens immediately after that, because if you recall, there's the people in the house break a water main, and that is really the straw that breaks the camel's back. And Jennifer Lawrence finally screams everybody out of the house. and then gets into a fight with Javier Bardem, which ends with my favorite and least favorite line in the whole movie, which is, "You talk about wanting kids, but you won't even fuck me." And, well, then they do go fuck, and Jennifer Lawrence gets knocked up immediately. So yes, at the whole movie up till this point has been escalation, with all the multiple people showing up, and Jennifer Lawrence can't get them out of the house, and Javier Bardem is being very blasé about the whole situation. And then after this, there's like this slump of no action where Jennifer Lawrence gets pregnant. Everything is A-okay for a little while. They're happy. It skips to like 9 months later.
We should emphasize, though, that they have sex once, and immediately
Yes.
when she wakes up, she's like, "I'm pregnant."
Yes. I thought that was extremely silly. They have sex once, and then cut to the next morning. She wakes up and then rolls over and whispers in Javier Bardem's ear, "I'm pregnant." And he's like, "How do you know?" And she's like, "I just know." I thought that was extremely corny. And then after this, what is it in terms of the runtime? Maybe 5 or 10 minutes in the movie where everything is peachy keen for a little while, and then it just starts ramping up again.
Yeah, they take like 5-10 minutes to fix the house a little bit.
Right,
They
and-
still don't ground the sink.
They still don't ground the sink. And in this time, Javier Bardem is immediately after they have sex, he is inspired to write again. Apparently, Jennifer Lawrence's vagina cures writer's block, and he immediately starts working on his next great work, which I guess in the context of the film can be considered the New Testament. His first is the old, and his second is the new. And then, so after this point, everybody starts showing up to the house again in enormous waves, and they start breaking things and taking stuff. And Javier Bardem is just reveling in all of this attention, saying, "Oh, it's brilliant. They all interpret my work in different ways."
Well, we should emphasize one thing, too. Once he finishes writing the poetry, he, like, shows it to Jennifer Lawrence, and she's like, "This is beautiful." And then he's like, "Oh, yeah, I already sent this to my publisher." My publisher, Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig is his publisher. That is probably one of the strangest casting choices for a movie I've ever seen.
It works so well for me, though, in a way, because you don't expect it, and it just adds to the pure, like, left turn escalation. And when you see Kristen Wiig in anything, like, Kristen Wiig's great, but when you see her in anything, you think Kristen Wiig. You don't think any other person or character. You think Kristen Wiig.
Right.
So,
You think SNL.
Yeah.
And-
so when you see her, it just derails it even more, and that's why it works
In
for
a movie
me.
that's not even supposed to be mildly comical, an extremely serious
See,
drama.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, no. I definitely laughed at times because of how ridiculous things were, but you know good and damn well that Aronofsky did not intend this movie to be funny.
Man,
you
well,
know good
okay.
and damn well he was taking it very seriously.
Who cares about intention? First off, The Room was meant to be a serious drama, but if you read Mother as a comedy, I think it works better than as a serious movie.
I can kind of agree with that.
And that's why it worked for me. I saw it as kind of just a horror comedy fever dream where it just keeps escalating and escalating.
Yeah, well, what do you think, Eugene?
I would not recommend this. Don't see this in theaters. Pirate it if you do have the interest. That's my recommendation anyway, because I was not a fan.
I was not a fan of this movie either. I found it very frustrating, but I would actually disagree with you. I would say if there's anywhere to see it, to get any sort of enjoyment out of it, it's in the theaters.
But then if you gotta pay, then it cancels each other out. Then it's not worth it for me.
Maybe in a second run theater.
Yeah, maybe in a
Go-
second run theater.
Go on a matinee or something.
Yeah. Go to
do
a
something
matinee.
like that.
Don't spend more than like $8 going to see
But you
this
won't have a
movie.
good time. You won't have a good
Aw,
time
man,
because
I
this movie, I can't even like it on that comedic level. I think it's just a shitty feeling that you get throughout the whole thing. And sure, I think that the acting is all good and well and all, but I don't like the message. I didn't appreciate how it was delivered, and I feel like a lot of the people that are talking about it positively seem to talk about it for the reasons I hate it. And so it seems
Yes,
like
that's
whoever
true.
the movie is made for, I do not align with their tastes. So.
Mother Defense Force coming in. Okay, wouldn't you say it's entertaining though? I mean, like in the escalation, it was entertaining to see how off the rails it got.
I mean, certainly, yeah, things got crazy, but I didn't feel like it was enough to make the film worth seeing. I think that's my problem. And if it's all just about the shock value, I mean, I could watch a trauma film or something like that, but I don't want Darren Aronofsky, who I really like. I like a lot of his movies, even Requiem for a Dream and Pi, I really enjoy. I didn't like the delivery, and I felt like it was just really patronizing throughout all the way.
I also think that it would have been more effective for me if it had really pushed the surrealism more throughout the whole movie, because it's pretty grounded for the most part, at least in the first act, maybe midway into the second act, but then it all really flies out the window in the third act, which is frankly my favorite part of the movie, but I don't think it properly built up to that point. If you're going to go really way far out there, super surreal, then I think you should set a sort of precedent for that from the very beginning.
I think they do though, with the crystal and the let's touch the wall of the house, which is actually a heart.
But it's
that decays.
It's not enough. It's not enough. For those who haven't seen it, to contextualize what Ben is saying, the very beginning of the movie starts with a shot pushing in on Jennifer Lawrence's face as she's on fire, she's burning. And then we see Javier Bardem place this little crystal on a stand in front of a mirror, and the whole house goes from being burned down into being whole again. It's like running back time. It immediately establishes an element of the supernatural that it then does not pick up until the end of the movie. Yes, at times we see Jennifer Lawrence pressing herself against the wall or the floor of the house, and it fades in and we see this weird heart thing beating, and it gets more and more decayed throughout the movie. But that happens maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the whole thing. And that, other than that, everything is extremely grounded until the people start to show up after Javier Bardem has written his second great work.
See, I would disagree. I feel like it had to be grounded from the start. I see the movie as all about escalation. You couldn't have escalation if you didn't start at, kind of ground level. One thing I'll say about Aronofsky, though, in general, is he's really kind of a high art exploitation auteur in a way, in that all of his movies, or almost all of them, do exploitation-y things in them, but they kind of take themselves seriously, and a lot of people regard them as high cinematic art. I mean, look at Requiem for a Dream. That's totally an exploitation movie, especially in the third act.
Right.
It gets very, very edgy and transgressive. And that's kind of, Aronofsky's mantra. Mother totally fits in that. It's, in a way it's going for that high art stuff, but deep down it's just an exploitation movie. And I think if...
I want to take this back to intention, because I know ultimately intention doesn't matter. It's how the finished product is received. But do you think Aronofsky intends these things to be exploitation or do you think that he truly views it as high art? Because I think, like I said before, I think he takes Mother extremely seriously, to its detriment.
Well, can it be both? He goes for the exploitation-y stuff where it's entertaining, but he's also trying for a high art message with it, even though it's really shallow as a message.
Since seeing this movie, I can't stop thinking about a movie that did basically the same thing, but I consider far more successful, and that is the 1990 experimental horror film Begotten by Elias Merige. I love that movie. And it does exactly what Mother fails to do. It sets a precedent from the very beginning that you're getting into batshit crazy territory. Like, it begins with a shack in the woods where a figure who is supposed to be God is disemboweling himself with a straight razor. And then Mother Earth comes along, finds his dead body, and uses his semen to impregnate herself. And it just goes way off the rails from there. And there's no dialogue. Pretty much the only thing you hear throughout the entire movie is the sound of crickets and nature and woods. And, you know, it's shot in that really high contrast, black and white, 16 millimeters, super grainy, super visceral. And it tells basically the same story that Mother's trying to, but it does it in a much more, like, straightforward, allegorical sense, but totally surreal. And it doesn't try to make these people characters, you know. Aronofsky really fails to make us care about any of these characters. They don't have any sort of personality. You have no reason to relate to them. They're just very flat. They're more like caricatures to me.
Sure. I obviously Begotten is a better movie than Mother, but I think they're very different at the same time. Because Begotten, you know, there's no real escalation in Begotten, I would argue. You know, I
disagree.
It is very bad shit, but it does the message and the themes of it more effectively.
I mean, there's definitely more of you know, sort of upward arc with Mother. Begotten has it somewhat, but I think Begotten is better is because, like I said, it sets a precedent for what you're getting into from the very beginning. It doesn't pretend to be something that it's not, which I think Mother does.
I like the fact that Mother does that in a way, because it kind of reminds me of like Spring Breakers. You know, Spring Breakers, it advertised itself as, you know, the spring break teen rebellion movie, but really it was kind of an art film.
Yes, definitely.
And,
I hadn't thought of it that way, and you're right. But that being said, Spring Breakers is a much better movie.
No, it's a fantastic movie. Go see Spring Breakers if you haven't seen it. But Mother is the same kind of thing. You know, it's advertised as this high art film, and really it's just an exploitation movie.
Which I do think is pretty great. I love how divisive this movie is, because I think it's a great prank on the wide audience, because it does definitely advertise itself as something that it's not, at least in trailers. And I can see how people go into it expecting a high art movie and then are totally turned off by what it actually is. And I think that's really funny.
Yeah, and that's why it works as a kind of a comedy for me in a way, in more kind of a metatextual way. I have to commend Paramount for having the fucking balls to give Darren Aronofsky such a huge budget for this batshit fever dream of a movie.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine any other big studio doing that.
Well, it's strange how much Noah made his last movie compared to everything else that he's done, because they usually...
Yeah, I haven't seen Noah.
I haven't seen Noah either. I didn't realize it made so much money, though.
It made like 150 million or something
Jesus.
worldwide, and I guess that's what got producers saying, hey, this Darren Aronofsky guy, he can do all this high art stuff and still make a lot of money off of people. And see if lightning can strike twice with Mother.
I think it's safe to say that Darren Aronofsky certainly has some religious hang-ups, to say the very least. Do you guys want to talk about the probably most out there and divisive part of this whole movie, since we haven't gotten into that at all?
Yes.
Okay. So after all of these people show up to essentially worship Javier Bardem and are tearing apart the house, Jennifer Lawrence goes into labor and locks herself in Javier Bardem's office, which is supposed to be the Garden of Eden. And she gives birth. And after several days, Javier Bardem takes the baby while she's sleeping to show it to his worshippers. And they proceed to promptly take the baby and eat it.
Well, let's preface this. They do like a wave thing with it.
Yeah, like a stage, like a stage dive. Yeah, the baby starts crowd surfing
and just starts peeing
and
all
it's
over
pissing
everyone.
all over the place, which was an interesting choice for me. It made me laugh, and I don't think I was supposed to laugh at that.
Oh man.
But yeah, so the baby is crowd surfing and pissing, and then they kill it and tear it apart with their bare hands, and everybody is eating pieces of this baby. So guess what that's supposed to be? It's communion, obviously. And at this point, that's way too much for Jennifer Lawrence, as it would be for anybody, I think. And it then gets into my favorite maybe 30, 45 seconds of the movie, where she picks up a piece of broken glass and just starts stabbing everybody around her, which is the first time I could relate to anybody in this entire movie. When she did that, I started in the theater sitting there nodding my head going, yes, fuck yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Same with me.
Because I think this reaction of hers needed to happen way fucking sooner. But what do you guys, I'm curious, what do you guys think about that whole scene with the death of the baby, the act of communion, and then Jennifer Lawrence just going batshit and stabbing people?
Even in the theater, I just imagine all these bougie film snobs. I only see foreign films. Watching this movie, expecting something high art, and getting to that point, and it just made me crack up in the theater. That was fucking hilarious for me in that respect. It was over the top, and it seemed like the crux of escalation. You can't really top that.
Well, right, and you never really do in the movie.
No, you don't.
Was the pissing necessary, do you think? Was the baby piss necessary?
Well, for me, I didn't even see the baby getting torn apart scene as very divisive, because there's so much chaos that happens before any of that actually happens. That's around the point when you start having all of these people murdering each other, tearing each other apart, locking them in cages. And
right,
so,
but violence against children, and particularly infants, is for a lot of filmmakers a line that they won't cross. You know,
I think
I don't have a problem with filmmakers who do cross that, because I mean it's a fact of life. Sometimes bad shit happens to kids, and it's a part of reality. I think it's commendable when filmmakers are willing to cross that line, because it's definitely a way to really shock your audience. Like, if you want to shock your audience,
that's a cheap trick to me. I think that anyone can use a dead kid. I mean, In Bruges uses the death of a child and actually tries to form something around that.
Well, I mean, there's also, within the context of this movie, it's obvious, you know, it's supposed to continue the allegory.
So I don't commend it on that level, because I know what it's supposed to mean.
Yeah, the baby is Jesus, who God gives to the people to sacrifice, and then they consume the body and blood of Christ, blah, 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 blah.
And so it's almost like it was expected to happen as soon as that baby got out there, so it didn't shock me in any way.
I guess the more shocking thing than anything else about, because you're not wrong, it is predictable when you know the baby's supposed to be Jesus. Okay, the baby's gonna die. I think it's just like the image of seeing like the dismembered corpse of the baby on the altar, and people like shoveling bits of baby into their mouth and like dripping blood and shit. I think that's what's supposed to be shocking.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't get me. I guess it must have gotten other people that.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, that's the point where a lot of people walked out of that movie. I think we would be remiss to not talk about the bad ending of this movie.
Yes, we should talk about the perplexing, weird ending.
After this point where the baby is killed, Jennifer Lawrence decides she's had enough, understandably so. She goes down into the basement where she, earlier in the movie, found some barrels full of oil or gas or whatever, and she sets the house on fire and blows it up and kills all of these fucking people in the house. And then Javier Bardem untouched because he's God, pulls her charred, barely living body from the remains, reaches his hand into her chest, and pulls out the crystal that we see in the very beginning of the movie. And he places it in its stand, and the whole house brings itself back together, just like the very first thing we see. A new woman, not Jennifer Lawrence, wakes up in the bed, and therefore it brings the entire thing full circle. And I thought that was garbage.
I thought it was really dumb too.
Yeah, that was the final nail for me. I mean,
that was my, I rolled my eyes so hard that they almost got stuck in the back of my head.
it certainly did just add a wonderful crappy cherry on top of what I thought was a pretty crappy shit sundae. So.
Man, yeah, like the cyclical stuff was like the biggest problem I had with it. Like they did that a few times during the movie. Out of nowhere, like the house, there was that shot of the house regenerating in the middle of the movie.
Right, while she was reading his new poem or whatever. Yeah, that didn't make any sense at all why they threw that in there.
No, I thought all of the cyclical stuff was really clumsy, and it really took away from all of it. More so than anything else for me.
Right, because it steps that line from, okay, maybe this still could recover itself, and it ends up just being one of those situations where it has that layer in reality. But that's the point when it takes it all the way to just, this is a allegory to...
It's this whole cyclical thing. God creates, he creates man. Man comes in and destroys the earth. God has to start over.
Right.
Because it starts the movie the same way it ends, we're supposed to believe that this is something that has happened over and over and over again. And because the woman is different every time, it's like a new earth every time or whatever. Something, some bullshit like that.
Or you could read it the other way, that it's Darren Aronofsky just not taking care of his wife, Rachel Weisz, and then that falling apart. And then it starts over with Jennifer Lawrence, and he gets to continue the pattern. The troubled artist trying to not...
That's true, because I believe they are like dating now, Darren Aronofsky and Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh man,
no. That's really really fucking funny if you think about it that way. But I think having to bookend the whole movie with like this whole cyclical nature thing is just really bad, because it doesn't leave any room for like contextual character development. And I'm not saying that we need like exposition about who these people are and were up until this point, but because we don't get any idea of who they are, it makes it really hard to care about them. You know, all the characters are so flat, and I think the acting is solid across the board.
Yeah.
But I think this is one of the greatest wastes of Javier Bardem's talent I've probably ever seen. I love him. I think he's great. Like, No Country for Old Men is one of my favorite movies, and I think he does a stellar job in that. And in this, there's just, I don't think he has enough to do. His character's not interesting. We don't get to really see him, like, show off his acting chops that he really has.
Right, because outside of the fact that he's supposed to be playing God, I mean, then he's just a pretentious poet at the most part. So.
Right, and we never...
Which I guess is Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah, God. We never,
that's what he is.
And that's the thing too. We never get any sort of indication of what his work is like and why people love it so much. You know,
I do like that it doesn't expand too much and it keeps it kind of from Jennifer Lawrence's perspective.
This movie's too general in its allegory. It's way too general.
Yeah,
an allegory is a new way of telling an old story, you know? And this is basically just a very straightforward retelling of stories from the Bible. It's way too general, and I don't care about any of it because of that. Should we rate this piece of trash?
Yes. I'll let you guys start because I know my rating will be much different.
All right, Eugene, we'll start with you. How many pods out of 5 would you give Mother?
Oh, God. For me, I thought the story was patronizing. I thought that the shocking imagery in the movie really got tiresome after a while. The performances were good, although they are wasted just on this film. So I'm gonna be nice, and I'll have to just give it. I'll give it a 1.5 out of 5.
I will give it the 2 out of 5 that you won't give it. I give it 1 pod for the acting and 1 for the look, because it visually, I think it looks very nice. It's a very pretty film to look at. So I thought the cinematography and camera work was good. But other than that, so 2 out of 5 pods for me. And last but not least, what about you, Ben?
I'm going to play the contrarian. I'm going to rate it 4 pods out of 5.
4 out of 5.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay.
You must
I
hate
thought
yourself.
it was one of the most entertaining movies I've seen in the theater. I like that it kind of just made people eat shit. I'll call it the Freddy Got Fingered syndrome.
Which I also hate.
But I thought it was one of the most entertaining movies of the year. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun. It was a dumb movie, and I'll totally agree with you guys on that. But the ride that it took us on is worth the price of admission, in my opinion.
I would say if you go see this movie, go see it with a couple of friends, because it is guaranteed to generate a pretty hefty amount of conversation, and odds are you will not all have the same opinion across the board, because we sure did not.
Absolutely not.
So it is just as divisive as they've been saying. So if you want to see something divisive, go see it. Take your grandma to go see it. She'll probably love it.
Yeah, there you go. It's like how Gone Girl was supposed to end relationships. This is going to end contact with your grandparents.
Yes,
so.
If you hate your grandparents and you never want to speak to them ever again, take them to go see Mother, and don't worry, you will not get any more birthday cards with a check for $10.
There you go.
Before we move on, I want to give a little self-plug. My last short film is very similar to Mother in a lot of ways. I might put it public on Vimeo after we release this, just so you can look at all the similarities.
They're very similar. I almost leaned over to Ben while we were watching this movie and said, "Hey, I think Darren Aronofsky ripped off your idea." Yeah, check that out. Ben's
Paramount,
Vimeo page.
give me money so I can do it better. But okay, 1.5 from Eugene, 2 from Matisse, and 4 from me.
Yep.
That gives it an overall rating of 2.5 out of 5 pods. So right in the middle of the road.
Right in the middle of the road.
Right where it belongs in a way.
Exactly where
you know?
it belongs. I could not have put it in a more perfect place.
Let's move on. In honor of Mother, we blindly picked 3 Mother-themed horror movies to talk
Mama
about.
got murder.
Bad mamas.
Mama just killed a man.
You know that song, She's a Bad Mama Jamma? It's kind of like that. We are now going to move on. We're each going to briefly lead a discussion on one of these 3 movies that we saw. So I'm going to start things out with Mama by Andy Muschietti, who incidentally also the director of It.
Yep, Danny Spaghetti. He's hitting it big right now.
Danny Spaghetti he's doing good. So this movie came out in 2013, and it was produced by Guillermo del Toro after he saw a short film by the same name on YouTube, directed by Andy Muschietti and his sister Barbara. And so they adapted this lights out style into a feature-length film starring Nikolai Coster-Waldau of Game of Thrones fame and Jessica Chastain of Jessica Chastain fame. They are a couple who have spent several years scouring the woods for Nikolai's nieces, who were kidnapped by his suicidal twin brother, I should say. After 5 years, they find them living in this abandoned house in the woods, and the girls have resorted to an almost feral state. Nikolai Coster-Waldau and Jessica Chastain bring them home to begin rehabilitating them, but it turns out that when they were living alone in the woods, they were being taken care of by a supernatural, spooky entity that they called Mama. And yes, Mama. And this spooky entity has followed them back to civilization, and jump scares ensue.
Galore. Jump scares galore.
This
excessive jump scares.
This
in my
movie
opinion.
might as well be called Jump Scare the Movie, because that is about all it boils down to. Gosh, there's probably at least one jump scare every, maybe 10 minutes in this movie, if not more frequently at times. So what were your guys' general thoughts on this movie? Because I saw it, I remember seeing it when it came out. I went to see it in theaters. I thought the short film was pretty cool. There's not much to it. It's like less than 3 minutes. Very simple, but for a low budget short film, I thought it was, pretty effective. But I think it's one of those things where it's hard to carry that sort of concept into a feature-length film without it seeming trite.
It has lights out syndrome.
Yes.
Both of those had very, very short films, and they just can't materialize well into a feature length.
These bigger studios and directors give these independent filmmakers an opportunity to convert one of their films into a feature length. I think that's very cool, and at least for Andy Muschietti, it has paid off, because he, has now helmed It Chapter 1. I don't know if he's going to be directing the second one, but
I believe he is.
I think he did a much better job on It than he did on Mama.
Oh shit, I didn't realize that Anthony Bugatti directed It.
Anthony Bugatti, Danny Spaghetti, did indeed direct both Mama and It.
Well,
Wow.
and it shows that he must be doing something right, because Mama, while, yeah, it's filled with a bunch of jump scares that aren't very effective at all, this also made a lot of money in the box office and was probably the reason why he got chosen to do It. Whether it just be that fact that people like getting startled, they like feeling that there's something scary happening on the screen every 5-10 minutes, that it just keeps them interested enough, rather than another movie that tries to build tension or suspense and just leaving them bored or wanting more.
And I don't even think he's like incapable of creating a creepy atmosphere.
I think that's what makes him so effective.
I think he pulls it.
Really
I think he
good
pulls
at that.
off both in Mama and It, and it just makes the jump scares feel so unnecessary, because it's like, you can do way more with the atmosphere without the need to startle your audience, and it's always that same thing where something happens that you don't expect, and it's accompanied by a loud noise. So, hey, you're supposed to be scared now. But I think the more effective parts of Mama are the parts that are without jump scares.
It works better when it's played from the hip, for sure. When
absolutely.
it's more subtle. One thing I will say about this movie is it feels super dated. I
hell
think
yeah.
it came out in like 2013, but it feels like it
2013.
came out in early mid-2000s.
Like, did we miss something in the beginning, that it's actually all supposed to take place in the mid-2000s and we just didn't catch it at all?
I don't think so. I've seen this movie a couple of times.
Yeah, like even fashion trends, like
Right,
Jessica
and they're
Chastain.
playing like the
man.
white
Okay,
stripes
well,
and everything.
We might as well talk about Jessica Chastain's character. She is like this punk rock chick who plays in a band, and very anti-establishment, and just isn't down with like conventions of motherhood or taking care of kids or anything. The whole thing is about, well, is she really fit to take care of these girls? And then we see at the end, yes, she is. She has learned to love them and learned to be a good mom. And everything is so fucking cliche. Like, I know when we were watching this, we could not stop making jokes about how something was not punk rock enough for Jessica Chastain.
I want to emphasize that Jessica Chastain has a rat tail for it.
She only has a rat tail in like some scenes,
Which
and
is weird.
it's very weird.
It was
like,
probably a personal choice by her that the director did not like, and so
I think it's a clip-on rat tail. That,
Very punk rock.
yeah, that's very punk rock. Because like sometimes she's got it, and then sometimes she doesn't.
what I found surprising is this was the same year that Zero Dark 30 came out, and so she managed to lead the box office in two wildly different movies.
That is very weird. I did not realize that.
Yes, yeah. So
That's
keep a
bizarre.
look out in Zero Dark 30. There's a rat tail in there somewhere. I guarantee it.
And you know, I think Jessica Chastain is a pretty good actress.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely seen her in things where I thought she kills it, and I think she does her best with what she's got in Mama. I just don't think she's working with a whole lot because her character is a living cliche.
Right, and I think because of that, her don't care attitude, it just seems like she's tired or something for a lot of the movie. She just doesn't seem very into it,
Right.
anything. And so hopefully that's just her character and not how she was actually feeling about the movie.
Well, yeah. I mean, it definitely could be a combination of the two because her character is very apathetic towards most things. You know, she ends up getting thrust into the role of a mother after the ghost mama attacks Nikolai Coster-Waldau and he falls down the stairs and goes into a coma. So then she is forced to live at home with the girls and this very spooky ghost. You know, this is another one of those things kind of like Mother, where I think the acting is pretty good for the most part, especially the kids, the little girls. I think they do a really good job, but it's more so that the characters are pretty badly written, and so the actors don't have a whole lot to do with it, you know. I think the worst character in this entire fucking movie is the therapist. Can we talk about the therapist for a minute?
Oh, yeah.
He just makes some of the dumbest decisions ever.
Yeah, right. All for the sake of just pushing the story ahead.
Right, just for the sake of driving the plot forward. Like when he goes at night out to the cabin in the woods where they found the girls.
Right.
To try
Well, hold on. Should we,
to try to dig
spoiler
up the...
spoiler warning. This movie's 4 years old, but doesn't mean that everyone's seen it.
Yeah, well, I mean...
I don't think we
need to give a spoiler warning for a movie that's any older than, like, a year old. Because if you haven't seen it at this point, then that's on you.
Spoiler warning redacted. Continue.
We're gonna get some pissed off tweets.
Don't at
How
me.
dare you? You were telling me that you were going to do Mama spoilers for like a minute, and I did not listen.
Don't...
Are you telling me that Jack Torrance dies at the end of The Shining?
Oh, no, shit. I haven't seen that movie, man.
Yeah, so the therapist goes out to the fucking shack in the middle of the woods at night, and then we get that scene where his flashlight breaks because of ghosts or whatever. So he's using the flash on his camera to illuminate the room, and then he gets attacked by the ghost and killed, and that's the end of him. Thank God.
Yeah, and it's all dumb because at this point he already found the remains of her baby and shit. Well, his plan, I assumed, was to give back the remains, but then he doesn't bring them to the cabin.
But he doesn't take. Retcon, backtrack. The reason this ghost is a ghost is because she like escaped from a mental institution or something and took her baby with her and was pursued by a torch-carrying mob because that's what happens. Flung herself off of a cliff and died, and so did the baby, but the baby's remains got stuck in a tree, so she can never rest until the remains of her baby are returned to her or whatever. So she decides to start taking care of these two little girls who are, lost in the woods.
What a great and appropriate portrayal of mental illness.
Right? And yeah, apparently the baby's remains are just like in a shoebox, like in some archive. Can we talk about the scene where the therapist goes to get the remains of the baby, and like the lady who's working at the archives is like, do you know what a ghost is?
Oh,
and gives
God.
that like really like this really long explanation of what ghosts are. And
Ghosts
the
are
dude is just like
tortured souls.
he's looking at her like so intently, whereas in real life anybody who was listening to this nonsense would just be rolling their eyes and like trying not and just be like, okay lady, why don't you just give me those dead baby remains. This is the second movie we're talking about where there's a dead baby. Have y'all noticed that?
I know what a dead baby is, woman. Now give me the dead baby remains. We can't not talk about the slap chop.
Yeah. Oh, my
yeah.
god.
That might be the most dated
I
thing
think that's
in the entire...
Yeah, I think that's the most dated thing in the fucking movie.
So it makes me think, is this supposed to take place in the mid-2000s?
Yeah, they're
What's
just
going on?
They're at the hospital or something, and there's a commercial for Slap Chop on the TV.
I can't decide if that's the best editing or the worst editing ever. Literally right after one of the biggest jump scares in the movie where like the dude is pushed down the stairs and you don't know if he's dead or not. They'd go from him on the floor straight to slap chop,
right to
smash
slap
cut
chop.
to slap
That is
chop.
exactly how it happened.
Oh my
Jeez.
god, yeah, that definitely is the most dated thing in this movie. Like, it came out in 2013, but like, when was Slap Chop? When was Slap Chop infomercials big? Like 2006?
Something like that.
Like, yeah.
My boy Vince getting his residuals, multiple sources.
He sure needs them after beating up all of those hookers.
Yep, goddamn.
Now he can buy more hookers.
No, that's right. He's getting his residuals from his cameo in Mama, so he can get more hookers to beat up. All right, so before we rate this, let's talk about the art direction and the sound design in this movie. What did you guys think of that? I think this is actually one of the strongest aspects of this movie.
No, I would agree with that. I think it all just helps to set up the atmosphere of the film. With all of that, it helps to elevate what would be a crappy movie in anyone else's hands into something that is entertaining for the most part.
Well, let's be more specific too, and let's talk about the titular ghost. What did you think of that design of Mama herself?
Well,
in terms of both how she looks and how she sounds, because how she sounds is very specific.
Well, apparently he based the Mama off of these paintings, and it's actually, I'm pretty sure, the same influence in It, that painting.
Is that really true? Because I saw an immediate parallel.
Yeah, I don't believe it's the same
too.
paintings. I don't even know if the painting in It is actually by that artist or if they made it themselves. But yeah, the artist that Mama is based off of makes paintings very similar to that.
Okay,
and
that makes a whole
total
lot of
sense.
sense.
yes,
That
right,
makes a
because
whole
you can
lot of sense.
you see that in because it's got the really weird potato shaped head,
Yeah, like the elongated potato head and like these
the French fry arms and all
that like bend in weird directions and stuff like that.
Right. So you can certainly tell that he's getting an influence from somewhere personal and with a context behind it all, and I think it does work, especially the fact that it's played by an actual actor.
Right.
It just helps with the movement and making it feel more of a presence.
I think in terms of creature design, I think they did a bang up job. Like some parts in the movie that are like, or at least I found genuinely pretty creepy, just because of the way she looks and sounds. Like, I think the sound design for Mama is great, especially like those weird like croaking gasps and shrieks that she does are just really, really unsettling.
Well, and the funny thing about the art design, it picks up a lot of the things that the cinematography didn't really do for me. I think the framing was effective. I thought the lighting was kind of bad.
Yeah, I don't think it was bad, but it didn't do anything special for me, you know?
It was so generic that it made it feel even more dated.
Well, like you said, it's got lights out syndrome, where you have a really tight short film that's based around a concept, and then you're given a lot of money to figure out how to adapt that into an entire movie. It's not the worst until the very end. I think the ending gets so absolutely ridiculously corny it feels like a fucking Disney movie. And it's just so over the top and so overly sentimental, and I hated it.
Yeah, I hated it too. It was one of those instances where the ending, I think, really weakened a lot of the rest of the movie because it just left you so unsatisfied.
Oh, yeah.
And just left wondering, was that really how they thought this would have been an appropriate way to end it?
And apparently there's a sequel in the works, and I don't know what the fuck they're gonna do with that.
Daddy.
It's just the ghost of Hugo Weaving from Hacksaw Ridge. I'm gonna have to beat you now.
Oh, man.
And the ghost just flies around hitting people with a belt.
No shit, I would watch that.
I would watch that too,
yeah.
actually.
You got me excited for
Andy
Mama Tuna.
Muschietti, can we get that movie? Can we get
Please,
the
Danny
ghost
Spaghetti?
of Hugo Weaving from Hacksaw Ridge beating people with a
Please,
belt?
Danny.
Get Bloomhouse on the phone right now.
Yes. Let's. I think we've pretty well wrapped up Mama. Let's give it a rating. Eugene, how many pods out of 5?
Well, see, I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna do it out of Mamas, just
Okay. How?
because I want to know
How many moms out of 5 would you give Mama?
I think the jump scares I did not find very effective. I thought that there were just a lot of really bad choices being made near the ending. I still liked the art design. I liked all the actors for the most part. I think I'm going to give it 3 Mamas out of Mama. Just middle of the road for me.
Nice. I'm going to go along with you and also give it 3 out of 5 Mamas. It's definitely not perfect. It leaves a lot to be desired, but it does some things right. And
You always got to give credit to a horror movie that can still be entertaining. And
right,
not just trash.
it is entertaining, if for the wrong reasons sometimes. But I think that it has enough enjoyable aspects about it to, still do something for you, even though it definitely drops the ball in the third act and it has way too many jump scares. Ben, what about you?
Okay, before I rate it, what would you consider half a mom?
Is it the top half or the bottom half?
That's a good question.
I was
Or is
thinking
it
left
split-
to
or is
right.
it split down the middle?
Yeah.
Is half a mom a ghost mom?
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, so I would rate this 2 moms and a ghost mom. So
Okay.
2.5.
So 2.5.
All right.
It had some effective moments, but it was very dated for me, and it never pushed itself out of kind of the generic mid-2000s horror movie for me,
I think you're right.
to its own detriment. Yeah, so 2.5, 2, and a ghost mama.
From the 3 of us, it's a grand total of 2.8 moms.
Oh, shit. A mama missing her left arm. So there we go.
Perfect. So the next movie we want to talk about is Serial Mom.
Serial Mom.
Directed by the legendary pervert John Waters.
John Water.
This was 1994. It's all about this mother, played by Kathleen Turner. She's a housewife to a general suburban, nice family.
Very 50s era nuclear family
Yes,
idea.
absolutely. Matthew Lillard is the son. I can't remember the guy who plays the dad.
Sam Waterston?
Yeah,
Sam Waterston, yeah.
he's in a lot of stuff, but
he's got the eyebrows.
He's a
He's the
character
eyebrow
actor.
man,
Yeah,
yeah.
eyebrows. She is secretly just causing havoc in the neighborhood in a way. She secretly calls one of her neighbors and just berates her in kind of a crank call, talking mad shit. The neighbor is kind of freaking out, but she has no idea who it could be. She accidentally kills someone for the first kill.
Oh no, she definitely runs dude over on purpose.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's because the teacher's talking trash about
her
kid.
son.
Oh, yeah, okay, so-
Played by Matthew
He's Matthew
Lillard.
Lillard's math teacher, and Matthew Lillard is a
Big horror movie
a
buff.
horror movie obsessive, much like ourselves. And his teacher thinks that his obsession with horror movies and blood and gore are affecting his studies. And so Kathleen Turner decides the only proper recourse for somebody talking shit about her son is to run him the fuck over with her car.
And from there, she gets a bit of a bloodlust and starts enjoying killing people. So throughout the movie, she just kills more and more people.
Anybody who slights her family in even the tiniest way is on her list. And it gets to a point where she does not even care if she gets caught. I think it's important to mention that she has a particular aversion to chewing gum. She kills a lot of people who are chewing gum. Like that's the final straw that pushes her over the edge into killing the math teacher, is when he takes out a stick of gum and puts it in his mouth and starts chewing. That's what really pushes her over the edge.
It's just so blasé, chewing gum. Yeah, no, and she does get caught. I don't feel bad about saying that.
No, this movie came out in 1994.
Yeah, if we're not worried about spoilers
well
for
out of
Mama.
spoiler
Okay.
zone.
But the interesting thing John Waters does with it is it's not like, oh, she's guilty. He kind of just embraces it. He has the family, making t-shirts and memorabilia. Everyone is on her side in a way.
Well, I think it's actually it's a pretty clever commentary on sort of the morbid fascination we have in America with serial killers, and how people will fall in love with serial killers and send them letters in jail and stuff. And she becomes, and how these killers become, celebrities in their own sort of twisted way. That's definitely what Serial Mom becomes,
Yeah, absolutely. And she's really into Charles Manson in the movie.
Yep.
So
she's been reading Helter Skelter and all kinds of stuff about the Manson family.
I found myself pretty jolted by I guess around the beginning of the third act when it ends up turning into some sort of like courtroom drama.
Yeah.
Because she gets caught and they take her in, they arrest her, but then she decides to represent herself.
Yeah, she fires her lawyer because he tries to put in a plea of guilty and tries to plead insanity for her, and she fires him and starts trying to defend herself and saying that she could not have done any of these murders. And she manages to convince the jury that she is innocent, which is super funny.
It's a really jarring transition to the courtroom drama stuff. But the thing is, it's so funny. All of that stuff is really
It's
funny.
absurd, yeah.
Well,
no,
yeah,
well,
it's
that stuff is
extremely
ridiculous.
absurd.
It gets a pass in my book just because it's so
absolutely.
comedic.
Right, because I mean, she's made, like, the police have been on to her from basically the beginning. They've just been trying to build a case against her, and the way she frees herself is by basically discrediting all of the witnesses in various ways,
It's a real My Cousin Vinny sort of situation.
Yes, very much. But yeah, and then we even get the part where her son and his girlfriend, who's named Birdie, take her to the video store where they work and hide her because they think it's so cool that she's a serial killer. It's just like in the horror movies they watch and they love, until they actually witness her murdering somebody with a leg of lamb, which I think is one of the best scenes in that fucking movie.
God, that's
where
right.
the lady is watching Little Orphan Annie, and she comes with the knife, and then she decides that the knife isn't good enough, so she goes back into the kitchen and grabs the leg of lamb and beats her to death with that. And it's so funny. And it's at that point that Matthew Lillard and Birdie are like, it's not like in the horror movies. It's like it's real.
No, I found that hilarious. That was definitely one of the best scenes. John Waters does such good camp where everything is over the top and ridiculous, but it's so funny that you kind of just have to embrace it. It doesn't feel low budget at any time. I'm sure it is low budget, but it doesn't feel like DIY like Pink Flamingos or any of his very early stuff.
Right.
It feels very constructed in a good way.
I agree with that for sure.
Which I think elevates the camp in a lot of ways. It makes it feel more in this world that he creates.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is extremely campy, and it definitely isn't a straightforward horror movie. It definitely rides that horror comedy line because it is a very funny movie, and I think in that regard it is very successful. It's especially with the stuff in the beginning with just how over the top like these very proper upper middle class families are, you know. A lot of it is like an after school special, you know.
You mentioned something there. Would you guys consider this a horror movie? Because it definitely rides the line.
I wouldn't consider it scary at all, but I would definitely put it into the slasher genre. And so in that way, I say yes, it is a horror film just because it is a slasher film, but it's definitely a horror comedy. And then you've got that weird courtroom drama at the end, which I think still works because it is very funny.
Yeah. Thematically, it's definitely a horror movie,
Yes.
but I don't know about as a whole. What do you think?
It's not scary.
Well,
that's for sure.
the tone of it reminds me a lot of another movie, Fido, which also has a very 50s aesthetic. It's a comedy for the most part, but it's a zombie movie as well. There are moments in there where they do show gore and violence and everything, but I feel like it always leans closer to a comedy than anything else. And I would feel the same way with this movie, where it does have a lot of influence from horror films and is telling a horror movie style plot, but I feel like it's definitely a comedy through and through.
Yeah, I would agree.
It definitely has the sensibilities of a horror movie.
But I think we're pretty much all in agreement. This is a good movie.
Yes,
And
this is
Yeah, no,
definitely
certainly,
a really
certainly
good
very
movie.
enjoyable.
All right, shall we rate this one and move on? We got one
Sure,
more
Yeah.
to get through before we get to our game of the week.
So yeah, Serial Mom, very effective. Really hits like thematic ideas of American obsession with mass murder and violence as a whole. Really good movie. Really fun, hilarious movie.
A wild ride for sure, in a different way that Mother is, but much more enjoyable.
I would
think.
give this movie a solid 4 out of 5. 4 pods out of 5.
I'm gonna agree with you, spot on that one. 4 out of 5 from me too.
I'm gonna do a 3.5 because while I did enjoy everything for the same reasons as you guys did, I still feel like that's as far as it may go for me. I think it is a lot of fun to watch, but I think that it really drags during the courtroom procedural part because it just feels so out of left field. It becomes a bit of a bore after a while.
So
That's
that's
fair.
a total of what, 3.8?
3.8.
I can
out
do
of
math
5.
now.
Yeah, now you got it. 3.8 out of 5 pods.
I will be starting off this next movie. This is Mother's Day. It was made in 1980, and it was produced by Troma Entertainment, the legendary production company behind such great exploitation films such as Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High, Tromeo and Juliet. They have a lot under their belt, and they have a very specific message, I think, to a lot of their movies, and it's just to be wildish and gory and sexual and just something freaky. Now, Mother's Day doesn't hit a lot of those high marks that their later films would, like Toxic Avenger, but it certainly still is a very gory and wild film. To start it off, it begins with a mother going to church, or no, it's just some like...
It's like some
Like a weird cult?
yeah, like weird culty, like self-help seminar.
Yeah,
Right.
this movie
thing.
starts off super weird.
Yeah, very strange.
Very, very, very strange. There are a bunch of hippies and whatnot there, and then the mother gets a ride back from these two hippies, and you find out that these hippies are murderers as well, and you see them preparing to tie up a rope around her neck when the car breaks down. But then there's a twist. It turns out that she's a murderer as well. So already off the bat, 100% of the people we have seen in that scene are murderers.
100% murderers,
100%
yes.
all the way. And then it completely changes to the story of these three girls who,
College roommates.
these college roommates that get together every year to spend a weekend alone with each other in the woods.
Yeah, to relive their college days and keep their friendships tight.
Right. So at this point, they're all a little older, they're all a little distant from each other, and so this is the time they get to enjoy each other's company. And it begins with the basic thing you'd see in a lot of slasher movies where they're out in the woods, where they're playing pranks on each other, just grabbing people from behind, talking, they're enjoying themselves. And in a scene which I actually haven't seen in a horror movie like that, where they're having their bonding moment and connecting, and right in the middle of it, they get kidnapped. It doesn't give any time for that to resolve. They don't get kidnapped at night. They just jump off screen and capture them in their sleeping bags.
I thought that was really great. Like,
Yeah.
you get that you have this really sentimental bonding moment where the one girl is like, I've never said thank you to you guys for, what did she say?
Being
Something?
my friend.
Being
Yeah,
friends,
for
which
being my friends,
bad friends,
and helping
that shouldn't
me,
be.
and helping me, like, realize my true potential and like making me the person that I want to be, or something like that. So it's like you're getting this really like sickly sweet sentimental moment, and then out of nowhere, the evil mother's two dim-witted sons just jump from off screen and just tie them up in their sleeping bags and drag them back to the house. Just no warning.
Yes.
I thought that was really effective.
Totally pulls the rug under.
Oh, it's that is
Because
fantastic.
like before that they show like the typical like Halloween, Friday the 13th thing where we see that they're being watched from the trees or whatever, that first person view with the like heavy breathing or whatever that's so tried and true in slasher movies. So like we know that they're in danger, but the moment where they actually are attacked comes out of nowhere.
Oh,
And
yes.
I like that a lot. It subverted the trope.
Now, this is the part for me where the movie really begins to lose me, because they get taken over to this house where the mother is there, and what the guy's name was, Cletus and Beatus, or whatever
I
they
think
are.
it was Ike and Adley.
Ike and Adley.
Ike
I was
the,
close.
The big one with the gross teeth and the milky eye, and then Adley was the long-haired one.
Ike and Adley. Okay. All right. So yeah, when Cletus and Beatus are attacking the girls, and they're harassing them, they're messing with them. It really doesn't go much of anywhere. I think at that point is the pure exploitational part of the film, where it's just, oh, let's see what twisted things we can get them to all do, and that goes on for a little while.
Yeah,
Eventually.
I agree with you. That was one of the least effective parts for me, because it's like the mom like sets up her lawn chair outside or whatever and has her boys like reenact these like very specific like rape scenarios with one of the girls. Like they force her to like sit on a park bench, and one of them comes over and like pretends to talk to her and then like grabs her or whatever. And they're just going through all these really weird like pre-planned kidnap and rape scenarios, and that whole thing just, it felt really weird to me. I was not a fan of that.
It felt like they were trying to play for spooks and be scary in that point. There were like hints of spookiness in that scene, but it wasn't consistent.
And I think when this movie came out is pretty significant because it was coming relatively hot on the heels of movies like Deliverance, where these city folks go out into the wilderness and are attacked by these like backwards rednecks. So it's like very much a product of cinema of its time. But whereas Deliverance plays it more straight, this is just like really trying to be as out there and exploitational as possible in true trauma fashion.
Right, yeah. And so it definitely knows what it's trying to do. It begins to lose a lot of its steam at that point. After the night that they have where they're getting that one girl gets raped. The other girls, they try to escape, which I thought was pretty interesting. One of them is put in a sleeping bag and then shimmy down. But turns out one of the brothers, Beatus, is walking around there, and he doesn't look up. And it's pretty crazy because it's not like it's hidden or anything, the sleeping bag. It's just hanging over his head like a foot above.
I thought that was
notice.
actually a pretty successfully tense scene, though.
Oh, I
because
agree.
It's like,
Yeah.
the one girl is lowering the other girl down in her sleeping bag, and one of the brothers comes around the corner, and he's like lingering, and like she can't pull it back up, and the rope is like cut cutting really
Yes, yeah, and
deeply
that was
into her
painful to
hand.
watch.
Ooh,
Watching.
yeah, that made me cringe
Because
in, like,
they
the
even
best
they show
way.
like it starts cutting in, like, and the skin is wrapped around the rope. And
Yeah, like really like great practical effects, really gross, really visceral, and I could just like it was just watching that was just like making my hands ache. Like I was, and it goes on for such a long time too. I thought that was one of the most successful
it was
moments
yeah.
in the movie.
super effective. Ouch.
And then after that, or no, it's like right before that actually, we get this this weird play on like a Rocky style training montage where the mom is like training the sons how to be more successful at like kidnapping and murder, and they're doing like these obstacle courses and like all of these really silly exercises, and like my favorite part is where the one is just hacking at a like a baby doll
Oh my
with a
God,
machete
yeah.
on the porch, like just like chopping up this baby doll like really like vigorously, and it's just so silly.
Yes, no, certainly very strange to see in this movie, and again, it all works up to what trauma is and what they try and do. I thought all of that worked pretty well. But the ending ends up being really disappointing. They manage to break out, they end up killing Cletus and Beatus, they end up killing both of those guys. One, they hatchet him right in the nuts.
Right in the balls, yeah. It
Yeah,
was
right in
good.
the balls. The other one, they make drink Drano, and
then smash a TV over
oh,
his
yes,
head.
right.
That action scene is pretty good where, yeah, so they escape, they rescue their friend who's been raped. They're
Oh
trying
yeah,
to
who's
find
shoved inside like a dresser?
in a dresser drawer in the boys' bedroom. And this house is we need to talk about the art direction in this house. It's just like spray painted all over the walls, just like absolutely trashed, like the grossest, nastiest house, but also in the funniest way. It's like if the house from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was designed by like an 8-year-old.
I loved it, though.
I loved it too.
Like the breakfast scene when it's just covered with shit, and they leave the table by just like walking
my
over
God,
it.
right, they
across the
stomp all
table
over
and
everything.
stomping on it. Yeah,
All the
I thought that
donuts
was
and
really,
shit.
really funny too. But so yeah, they rescue their friend. They try to escape the woods. Their friend dies out in the woods, and so they say, "Hey, let's get revenge for our dead friend." So they decide to go back and kill Cletus and Beatus and their twisted mother.
And at that point, when they go and confront the mother, there's a nice little reincorporation. The knife in the back gag that one of the characters did to her friend in the beginning of the movie uses it again to trick the mother into thinking that she was stabbed by one of her sons. And then we get this scene where one of the girls is suffocating the mom with a pair of inflatable breasts. So we see earlier that she has a very overbearing mom. We never see her on screen, we just hear her yelling. And so we get this very...
I'm a sick woman.
It
we
sounded
get
like a dude
It
yelling.
did sound like a
too.
dude. I think it was a dude.
Yeah. It was
Probably
Lloyd
Lloyd
Kaufman.
Kaufman. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought that was a really good callback too.
Right, to show that a lot of the overbearingness of mothers, and that this main character had her own issues that she was dealing with, and so she releases it on this mom.
Yeah.
And it just...
Well, right, as she's suffocating the evil mom with this pair of inflatable titties, she like keeps hearing her own mother's voice in her head, and she starts talking to the evil mom like she's her own mom. So it's like she's acting out all of her frustrations on her own overbearing mother by killing this other like crazy mom.
Right. And at that point, I felt really bad for the friend of that character, because she probably thought, oh, crap, I'm just surrounded by crazy people everywhere. I mean, besides her, everyone else on the screen was a murderer, so...
Right.
I thought it was a really cool way of retextualizing that scene.
I think so, too.
Like,
I think so,
whereas
too.
it would just be like, oh yeah, they did it. Hooray. It's a little more bittersweet and
Yes.
complex. And I really have to give them props for that.
It's kind of twisted in a way, and I think it gives some nice context to the characters and a bit of motivation too, you know, other than just your typical revenge story. I mean, which it is, but it adds a little bit extra to it that I
Yeah.
think really elevates it past that generic revenge story.
You feel bad for her in a way, where you wouldn't otherwise, especially since throughout the rest of the movie, the girls are kind of the worst.
Oh God, they're
Yes.
so bad, especially to their one friend who ends up getting like raped to death.
Yeah.
They're so rude to her the whole movie. They're always just like, man, life really always takes a dump on you, doesn't it? Like, life is really always so shitty for you. And like, they're just so fucking mean.
Right,
to
it's
her.
like the last point when they see their friend, because she's already dead and they're saying goodbye to her body. They say something like, "Life always beat you down everywhere it turned." it didn't seem like she was off that poorly.
No,
before,
like we
so-
never. The only context for that we get is that at the beginning, her boyfriend is like a piece of shit who
Which,
steals money out
holy
of her
shit,
purse or
he
whatever.
immediately shows himself to be one of the just scummiest characters I've ever seen on film, because first off, he does the fake jump scare where he grabs her from behind, except this is like actually very aggressive,
Very
like,
rapey.
like
Yeah, very
like
rapey.
very incredibly like just gripping her face and everything. And then when it calms down, rather than him just, oh, I'm just playing around, he ends up just being a fucking
Yeah, just
asshole.
a douche. And
He
just,
steals the money. He's just
And
like,
then he's like-
hey, I could never work a day in my life.
yeah, he's like, I'm really jealous of you because you have a 9-to-5 job. I could never work a job like that because I'm a sensitive artist. I just can't do it.
Oh, yeah, right.
So
He
he
says
just
he's an artist.
so he just steals
Like 50 bucks.
steals like $50 out of her purse like right before she leaves, and then just like sits on the couch in like his shorts and just snorts a bunch of cocaine.
Oh, yes,
Also,
right.
I didn't bring this up when we were watching this movie, but honestly, I don't think anybody who made this movie has ever done cocaine before.
Oh, because the guy
every-
at the pool party, he snorts it and then
like passes out.
Yeah.
Like everybody who does cocaine in this movie, like right after they snort it, it's like they get really drowsy and sleepy.
right.
It's like
Unless, of course, that guy was actually having an overdose, and
which
they
could
just-
have been, but like the boyfriend like snorts that line of coke and he has his drink and then he lays down on the couch and goes to sleep.
Guys, they're
Right.
just snorting ketamine.
They're just
Oh,
no,
there we go.
You're right.
That
it's
makes
not
sense.
coke,
They're
it's
just falling into
Special K.
K-holes.
It's just Special K.
I almost wish the baseball field scene.
Right, the flashback where
One
they
of my
where they get
favorite
revenge on one of her
scenes,
bad
to be
boyfriends or whatever.
honest. One of my favorite scenes. I really like the use of "I Think We're Alone Now." That song.
Yeah.
It was like the only time they use music in it, really, like popular music. I thought it was really effective, but I almost feel like they should have combined those two characters, the new boyfriend and that boyfriend, and it would have given it a bit more of a payoff.
Yeah, I think so too.
But oh man, that scene's one of the best in my opinion. You have that douchey baseball boyfriend.
He's like, yeah, let's bang on the pitcher's mound. I've always wanted to fuck on a baseball field or whatever.
he gets nude and starts doing push-ups just to tone
Yeah, he
his
starts
body.
doing push-ups naked, and then, so they turn on all the lights, and then he runs off. Yeah, I thought that scene was pretty funny too.
Yeah.
Man, but it's a lot of birds.
Yeah, man, y'all
Wow.
hear those birds?
Invasion.
Fuck.
It's
Fucking
like,
tweet,
is this
tweet.
an Alfred Hitchcock movie?
Yeah,
Man,
goddamn.
they're going after it. Ignore
Wrong
the birds.
episode. Fuckheads.
Yeah, do this for our Hitchcock episode.
For our Birds remake
Um,
episode.
But I think where it decided to cop out on an ending is that there is a scene very quickly where they describe that the mother has a twin sister or a sister of some sorts that was supposed to be evil and got driven out into the swamp. And they only mention that once. In the
Well,
entire
I mean,
movie.
they only really talk about her once, but the mom keeps mentioning like the boys can't go off and do their own thing because she needs them to protect her from Queenie. So we don't find out who Queenie is until like almost at the end of the movie where we get some exposition that it's like her evil sister
Right.
and then was like driven out into the woods and who lives like a feral person, and there's not really much payoff for that.
Oh no,
until-
not at all. In fact, I think it ruins because they use it as the ending.
Well, right,
where-
yeah, okay. So after they kill the boys and the mom, they're like, "Yay, we did it, we're good." So they leave the house and go out into the woods. And right at the end, they're immediately attacked by this like Bigfoot monster who's supposed to be like the evil sister. I'm not gonna lie, I actually thought that was great.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was really funny.
I thought that was an awesome ending. Like, and it just like she jumps out of the bushes at them, and then it cuts to the credits. Like that's the end
It
of the
like
movie.
freeze frames and goes to yellow.
Yep, yeah.
See,
No, it's certainly all
it caught-
ridiculous.
it took me by surprise. It definitely took me
Yeah,
by
I
surprise.
Well,
was
see,
not
it
expecting
didn't
it.
take me because as soon as they brought it up and the movie did not end after she murdered the mom, it's like, oh God, are they actually going to just end it on that note? And they did. And I thought it just seems like a weird thing to add in when everything else worked fine without that in the movie. And
I
certainly,
did like
hey,
that it didn't give it a happy ending, though.
Well, okay, yeah, sure, that I can understand that, but I think it all just plays into that it's so exploitational, it just does whatever it likes, and so to just bring it to that point where they get killed by this monster character that we've only heard talked about a couple times and then just pops out of nowhere at the end of the movie, just it felt like they could have found another stranger way to try and finish up this film.
maybe
But it
so.
doesn't.
I thought it worked pretty well because there's this aspect of is the mom like crazy? Is she imagining that her sister's out there or not? Like, is it all in her head? And
I don't
just an
find
excuse
much
for
of that
her-
very interesting, though. I mean, she was crazy enough just being a crazy mom. It didn't need to be really because there was some witch creature sister.
Well, right,
in
but
the woods.
we wonder if that she's using it as an excuse to like keep her sons with her and not let them like go out into the world and do their own thing. She's like, you can never leave me because if Queenie's around, she's gonna kill me. So then the sons at a certain point are like, well, is that really real, or do you just not want to let us go? So it adds that aspect of the overbearing mother and whether it's like in her head or not. And then so we think, oh yeah, it must be in her head. And then at the very last second, we find out, no, it's not. And that's why it works for me.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I understand where you're coming from because it is such like a minor plot point of the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
and
it just feels like
sort of
a-
comes out of nowhere at the end.
Yeah, a strange cop out that they did not use in a very effective way. They could have. It would have been. I would have appreciated more if they. Maybe the creature attacks once the sons are dead, and then it's not just about killing that mom, which, I mean, it ends without much of a challenge, but where they have to deal with this monster now, too.
I think
or
it
maybe
would
the
have felt
monster
like
would kill the mom.
I think it would have felt like more of a cop out if they had thrown in the monster like towards the end as like an additional
rather than ending the whole movie in 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think so because the movie's not about that. It's just a way for them to subvert your expectation at the very end and take away the happy ending that they have. It's like it's just like a little added effect. It's not like a plot point that they try to make something out of.
Well,
and
I guess
still
I can get it
develop.
with that level of irreverence, I guess, where you can just end the movie however you want. Sure, it works in that sense, but I think that it's disappointing for me.
Okay.
So
Well, no, that's totally fair. Shall we rate this?
Yeah.
I appreciate all of the subversive craziness behind the movie. It began to drag for me around the middle, and for me, I thought the ending was disappointing and just it was a missed opportunity to try and do something better with the things that they had set up. So for me, I think I'm gonna have to give it a 2.5.
I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I agree with you that it dragged in the middle, and there was definitely times where I started to get bored and was like, okay, come on, let's move it along here. And it also didn't quite reach the batshit insane level that I would expect out of a trauma film. So I think 3.5, entertaining, plenty of fun stuff, good practical effects, solid effort, but especially the middle could use a little tightening up.
Yeah, I would actually rate it the same. I would rate it 3.5. The things it does well, it does really well. I think of the hand scene where she holds the sleeping bag over. I thought that was incredibly tense. Really, really effective. I thought the art design of the house was great. The character design was really good. A lot of the subversions of expectations they did was pretty effective. And I actually found the abduction stuff scary in a way. Great trauma movie. God bless you, Lloyd Kaufman. You're a god. You're a genius. You're one of the greatest things to ever happen to indie cinema.
Although this was directed by Charles Kaufman.
His brother.
Not Lloyd Kaufman.
His brother. But
his brother, who got his start in directing softcore pornography.
I will say, though, that being under the Troma name is important. Great movie. 3.5 out of 5 pods.
So that brings our average to a nice round 3 out of 5 pods for Mother's Day. And that wraps up our retrospectives on bad mom movies. Do we want to give some awards?
Yes, the Bad Mama Awards.
The Bad Mama Awards.
Bad Mama Award. Okay.
All right. So
You
first off,
yeah, you want to lead us in the categories, Ben?
yeah. So let's start off with, out of those 4 movies, which was the most entertaining to each of you?
For me, entertaining, definitely Serial Mom. Definitely Serial Mom.
How about you, Eugene?
I think I'm gonna have to say Serial Mom as well.
All right, and I would actually agree. I almost would say Mother, but Serial Mom was so funny that I have to go with it.
All right,
I mean,
so Serial Mom by a landslide.
yeah, so
Yeah.
most entertaining goes to Serial Mom. How about scariest? This is one we might differ on a little bit.
Yeah, I think we probably will. I didn't find any of these movies particularly scary. I think if I had to pick a scariest, it would be Mama. Jump scares aside, just some of the atmospheric stuff and like the more subtle, creepy tension building, I think was definitely scarier than any of these other films.
How about you, Eugene?
No, I think I'd have to agree as well with Matisse that a lot of the other choices that we had weren't exactly super scary. Mama is the one that really is just trying to be a straight horror movie. And so I'm going to have to give it to Mama just on that.
Man, I would disagree. I would go with Mother's Day. Mother's Day had the scariest moments and the most tense moments, in my opinion.
Okay.
And it didn't rely on jump scares in nearly the same way as Mama.
For sure.
And in that respect, I found it scarier.
Don't get me wrong. I do not think Mama is the scariest because of the jump scares. It is in spite of the jump scares. Okay. Because as I've said multiple times, jump scares are not scary. They are startling. They have no lasting effect.
Yep.
For me, Mother's Day was just a little bit too cheesy to really be frightening. I loved it, like cheesy in a good way, but I was never particularly frightened or disturbed by it.
That's fair.
So I guess Mama wins that one with 2 out of 3 votes.
Sure. Now going on to best scene. What was the best scene of any of the movies? I'll let you start, Eugene, if you know.
Well, I think I would have to choose the sleeping bag and rope scene from Mother's Day. I thought that one was done well. It had tension, suspense, and a good practical effects behind it as well that really made you feel just the rope sliding between her hands. I thought that was very well done.
I really want to go with that, but I also really like the crank call scene in Serial Mom. It stand out to me, one of the best. I think I'll have to go with the sleeping bag scene as well. I thought the practical effects were amazing, really good and unexpected for a movie that was so low budget.
Definitely made me squirm.
Incredibly effective.
I think I will also agree with you guys. My second place would have to be the leg of lamb murder scene from Serial Mom. Where she beats the lady to death who is singing along with little orphan Annie. I thought that scene was really, really funny, and the fact that she goes back for the leg of lamb instead of the knife. But overall, I'm going to agree with you guys, and we'll give it 3 across the board. Sleeping bag scene from Mother's Day.
So next going on, we have best art direction, and I'll start this one off.
Okay.
I would definitely go with Mother's Day. I think because of the house, how it's so well designed and constructed and so gross feeling, that it really does it for me as a whole and makes it it elevates the low budget feel of the movie.
While I do agree with you, I'm going to go with the underdog and say Mother. A movie which I otherwise did not enjoy particularly, but especially in that third act when the house starts to be destroyed and they're setting up these like various altars of worship towards Javier Bardem's character, and then you get the people in cages and like all of this different stuff. There's such like so much great variety in that part of the movie alone, and I think it's visually very stunning. So I'm going to say Mother.
Wow. Eugene?
Well, I think I am going to have to pick Mama just because I really like the design of the creature. So that's the one that really does it for me. I think that, well, if Mama were a better movie, I think Mama could have been one of the new movie monsters if it didn't suffer from a lackluster story. So,
All right.
Awesome. So we split the board a little
bit. We have a
bit.
three-way tie.
All right.
No conclusive winner on that one. That's okay.
So best bad mama. I guess you can't really say Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah,
is a
it
bad
doesn't.
mama.
That one doesn't.
So
really
she's
count.
automatically kind of out of the
her
running.
baby got murdered.
Yeah,
I guess that does
But
make you a
because-
bad mom.
sucks.
Yeah, but not really through any fault of her own, and she avenges the baby pretty spectacularly. So I would say unless either of you really think Jennifer Lawrence
No.
is the best bad mom, then we can just take Mother out of the,
Yeah,
running.
that's fine. Well,
Kathleen Turner,
Kathleen
there we go, landslide.
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Man, she is just a great character and such a good bad mom. I loved everything about her character. That one's an easy one, I think.
Yeah,
easy. Kathleen
fantastic.
Turner in Serial Mom.
And finally, best overall film. And I think we pretty much have an agreement, looking at our ratings for the other movies.
I think, Serial Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, Serial Mom. So we have a definitive list there. I mean, we can probably post this list in the show notes if anyone wants to see what movies you should check out.
Definitely, and we'll post our average rating between the three of us. I'd say there's definitely something to be gained from all four of these movies that we've talked about, but they also could cater to very, very different audiences. So keep that in mind when checking these out.
All right, let's move on to the game section.
All right, game time.
I will
This
be
is what I've
the
been
host.
been looking forward to.
So the premise of this segment is
All right.
I have international titles for a few movies, and I will give you guys 4 options on what the actual movie will be, and you guys
All
have to
right.
decide. And the winner does get to pick an additional review that the loser has to review next podcast solo, and they can be as punishing or as rewarding to each other as they want.
Can it be any movie? I mean, any horror movie.
Any movie.
Any movie that relates to our theme.
You want to keep it thematic?
Yes, I think
We can do that. We can do that.
keep it
There's
thematic.
usually enough
I got one.
movies.
I got one selected already.
Oh, I do
so.
too.
All
I do
right.
too.
Someone's
All right.
watching Smiley. The first movie is a movie called The Devil's Seed in Spain. Is it A, Carrie, B, Rosemary's Baby, C, Bad Seed, or 4, Mother? And Eugene, what do you think it is?
I feel like we went over this one before. Maybe it was a different title, but I think if I did have to choose, I'm going to choose what I remember being correct. I'm going to have to choose number 1, Carrie.
I'm also going to say Carrie.
Oh, fuck.
It's Rosemary's Baby, guys.
Damn it. That would have been the most obvious.
Yeah, that seemed too
Fuck.
obvious. I was trying.
Yeah.
I was trying to go with something a little different.
I can't make
goddamn.
it easy for you guys. I got to
I
trick
guess
you
that's
up
true.
a little bit.
Okay.
All right, so number 2.
0-0.
A Long Night at Camp Blood. Is it A, Sleepaway Camp, B, Lake Placid, C, Wet Hot American Summer,
What?
left field choice, or D, Friday the 13th?
Now my gut is telling me to choose Wet Hot American Summer, but I'm going to go against it, and I'm going to do Friday the 13th.
I was gonna say Friday the 13th too, but I just to make things a little more interesting, I'm gonna say Sleepaway Camp.
It is actually Friday the 13th.
Hey,
Looks like
fuck
Eugene
yeah.
got that one.
I should have gone with my gut, and then we
Bam.
both would have gotten it.
All
There we
right.
go. All right. I'm in the lead.
All right.
So now we have one more and then a tiebreaker if we need it. Number 3. The Pages of Horror. Is it A, The Babadook, B, In the Mouth of Madness, C, Evil Dead, or D, The Exorcist? I'll let you start, Matisse.
Okay. I've actually seen all of these movies. And I am going to take a slightly left field guess, and I'm going to say that it's In the Mouth of Madness.
I am going to have to go with Evil Dead. Oh, fuck.
Are we both wrong?
Babadook.
The Babadook?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Spooky
There's the book in
bedtime
the
story.
Oh, come
Yeah.
on. All right, that's a bad one.
All right. Do you want to play the bonus one
Yeah,
that I
fuck
have?
it. Let's
Okay.
do the bonus.
So-
So then what happens if you get it? We're going to have to choose another one.
Well, okay, let's just say Eugene
we'll
wins.
say Eugene wins. We'll say
But
Eugene wins.
we'll just do this one for fun.
Okay. All right.
if I
so-
had gone with my gut and chosen Friday the 13th for the last one.
The fun part about the tiebreaker is there's a selection from each of the previous ones.
Oh, hey.
So the title is The Night the Screaming Stops.
Okay.
Is it A, The Babadook, B, Possession, C, Sleepaway Camp, or D, Carrie?
Well, it seems unlikely that it's the Babadook, considering that that's the Pages of Horror, apparently. This is a tough one. I'm gonna say Sleepaway Camp again. Maybe I'll be right this time.
I'm going to have to say Possession. I don't know that one, so I'm just taking a leap on that.
Well, you're correct again.
It's Possession, really?
Yep.
Fuck, I'm bad
Booyah.
at this game.
Possession.
Woo, I should be better at this. Well, okay, if anything, that definitively makes Eugene the winner for sure.
Yep,
Hey,
absolutely.
fantastic.
So, Eugene, what movie is Matisse watching and reviewing
right.
next
Well,
week?
I feel like to tell him what movie, should I mention a bit about what our theme is going to be next week? Okay, so for our next episode, we are going to be watching the new release, Friend Request, and we decided to form our show based on the internet and the horrors behind it and
The horrors of the World Wide Web.
exactly, and see what happens when ghosts go viral. And for Matisse, I'm gonna do something. It is about the internet, the dangers of the internet. Nothing supernatural, but I've just heard so much about it, and I'm gonna have to see if Matisse is interested in it and likes it. Maybe I'm gonna have to recommend him. Megan is Missing.
Megan is Missing. Okay, I've actually never seen that, so
Okay.
that will be new for me.
Fantastic.
You're,
There you go.
You're very lucky that I lost because I was gonna make you watch VHS Viral.
Oh
which
my
is
God.
a bad,
man.
bad
Well,
movie.
thank
I would have made you
goodness.
both watch Smiley. That movie looks atrocious.
Yeah, but it can't be any worse than VHS Viral. But okay, Megan is
Maybe,
Missing. Megan
okay.
is Missing. All
Okay,
right.
well, we
so-
have one. I will give an idea of what the next podcast game will be.
Okay.
Just so you have a little heads up. Next week,
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now. I keep saying next week. The next game, I'll give you 3 web-based movie titles, and you guys have to pitch a movie based on the title to me.
Okay.
And
all right.
I will pick whoever gives the best pitch.
All right.
I love it.
I think that's about it, guys.
I think that
that's
wraps
about
up
the podcast.
Our inaugural episode.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Well, hang on. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of Pod People. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends on social media, word of mouth, whatever. We wanna get people in here enjoying horror movies with us. And
Yeah.
if you're not a fan of horror movies, well, maybe we can change your mind. Maybe
Make
we
you
can
laugh a little bit.
point you in the direction of some horror movies that you might like.
So yeah, you can listen to us on SoundCloud. We're hopefully going to get on to Spotify's podcast section and Apple Podcast, as well as Stitcher and RSS and all that jazz. We still have to figure out a lot of that stuff, but it's coming.
We'll for sure be on SoundCloud.
Yes.
So follow us on SoundCloud, and as we spread to other platforms, we will keep you posted, and you can follow us there.
Yep, and you can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Sheets.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Van Awesome.
And I do not have a personal Twitter, but if you're in the mood for some wonderful haikus for the modern age, you can check out Strictly Haiku, and that is my Twitter. So be sure to check it out if you're looking for something short, quick, easy, and profound.
Thank you so much again for listening. I am Matisse Van Rossum.
Have a spooky night, guys.
Well, aren't you guys gonna say your names too?
Ooh, there's no one else here. It's been you all along.
Oh shit, have I been talking to myself?
Oh, we're fucking ghosts.
I am Ben Sheets' ghost.
And I am Eugene Lundine's ghost.
Oh god. Well, we'll catch you next time. Stay spooked.
Ooh.